No, the case should have been reassigned by the supervisor. It is the supervisor's job to know what her workers are facing and what their workload is. So the case should have been reassigned so that somebody could go.
Welcome to Young Black Lives Honored. Be sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Also give this video a thumbs up and leave a respectful comment below. On May 11, 2022, law enforcement raided the home of 28-year-old Whitney Ard and found several opioids and illegal substances. They believe her house was being used as a den to sell such. She, along with Mitchell Robinson Sr., were arrested and Whitney bonded out a little over a month later on June 25th after paying $6,000 of a $48,500 bond. Upon her release, she picked up her 2-year-old son, Mitchell Robinson III, from her mother's home. According to the woman, she was sleeping in bed with her son when he woke her up and asked for food sometime through the night. She said she made a bowl of cereal, placed it on the floor next to her bed, and went back to sleep. Ard stated that she woke up later that morning to find Mitchell back in bed, but noticed that he was cold to the touch, unresponsive, and his fingertips, mouth, and tongue were blue. Following a 911 call, paramedics arrived at the 5962 Denova Street home, where they found Whitney's friend trying to perform CPR on the child who was laid on the pavement. The child's mother told emergency responders that the toddler had a history of seizures. First responders tried giving Mitchell epinephrine, a medicine used to treat allergic reactions. When that was unsuccessful, the woman told the paramedics that her son responded to Narcan in the past. The 2-year-old was rushed to the hospital by ambulance. Unfortunately, Narcan, a treatment for patients suffering from opioid overdoses, also proved ineffective in reviving the toddler. Heartbreakingly, Mitchell Robinson III was pronounced deceased shortly after arriving at the hospital. On August 2nd, the East Baton Rouge coroner announced that Mitchell's demise was caused by acute fentanyl toxicity or fentanyl overdose. The coroner, Bo Clark, referred to Mitchell's demise as a, quote, significant failure, and said that a third report was sent to DCFS by a physician who treated the child. Sources close to the case said that investigators wouldn't move forward with the case without blood work confirming drug exposure. Days later, the physician called DCFS again with blood work showing fentanyl was in Mitchell's system. Clark noted that the physician's documentation was perfectly laid out in a timeline and appropriate manner based on her clinical suspicion, including the things she did and the people she spoke to. The coroner regarded the ordeal as totally preventable, being that if there was a moment between the second and third incident where action was taken and the child was placed in protective custody, then the third, which ultimately was his demise, would not have occurred. Whitney Ard was arrested and charged with negligent homicide, and her bond was set at $50,000. Additionally, she was ordered to wear an ankle functioning GPS device. However, a judge put a hold on the bond. At the time, District Attorney Hiller Moore said his office planned to file a motion the following day to revoke Whitney's bond for the May drug arrest due to the recent homicide arrest.
Mom in jail in Baton Rouge in connection to the death of her toddler. Nick Perlin has the latest on a hearing that was held yesterday for that mother.
District Attorney is hoping to keep Whitney Ard locked up. Whitney Ard made her appearance in court Monday after another arrest this week, one for negligent homicide in the death of her 2-year-old son. Her demeanor in court not far off from this picture of her right after her arrest last week. Not much emotion, but there's a lot of emotion surrounding her charges and why she's in jail now.
It seems that their inaction has led to the death of the child. We don't need this mistake to happen again. We need them to react and protect children. I mean, that's in the title of their department, and probably in what they're supposed to be doing.
In May, the baby's mother was arrested for drugs, an arrest also reported to DCFS. The district attorney's office is trying to block her from being able to post bond and get out of jail.
An investigation determined that there had been 2 previous instances where Whitney took Mitchell to Our Lady of the Lakes Hospital because he was unresponsive. Apparently, both incidents were reported to the Department of Children and Family Services when they occurred. During the April 12th incident, healthcare workers noted the child was suffering from respiratory failure and seizure-like symptoms, though his brain activity was not consistent with a seizure, and, quote, no seizure medications were needed. The toddler was treated with Narcan, then released back into his mother's custody 4 days later. On June 4th, the woman once again took Mitchell to the emergency room after she noticed he was experiencing breathing difficulties. She noted that they were similar to the time in April. The unresponsive toddler was again treated with Narcan, then discharged from the hospital 2 days later.
Now, the coroner's report shows that he had nearly 14 nanograms per milliliter of fentanyl in his system. Mind you, 3 nanograms per milliliter will kill an adult. He had 5 times the lethal limit.
DCFS Secretary Marketa Walters released a statement but declined an invitation to do an on-camera interview soon after the announcement. She said that they learned of the tragedy and immediately began a comprehensive review of the case and all circumstances surrounding it. Walters stated that the department had already taken numerous steps to make changes that range from policy changes to personnel changes, and the review was ongoing. To conclude, Walters said they were also working with the Office of Inspector General to review every step of Mitchell's case, and she was not able to comment further. When media sources reached out to the Office of Inspector General about their investigations, officials said that they weren't able to comment on the matter at the time. On another note, Juvenile Court Judge Gail offered a general insight into the process and said that moving the case forward or escalating it would have been determined by the DCFS employee who was responsible for responding to those reports. After Mitchell's passing, state lawmakers grilled officials with Louisiana's DCFS who blamed the failure on staffing shortages, saying it has been difficult finding workers to fill their openings. Assistant Deputy Secretary Renda Hodnett said, in quote, "No one wants to do this work. Case workers are exhausted, afraid, and the trauma they bear every day is incredible," end of quote. According to neighbors, Whitney planned a memorial for her son less than a month after his passing on what would have been his 3rd birthday. They said she had happy birthday signs and other props outside the home. Other neighbors were appalled after hearing about the terrible incident on the news and were furious that no one stepped in. The arrest warrant showed Mitchell's sister was interviewed on July 6th, and she reportedly said she had seen lots of pills on their mother's bed in the past. The child went on to say that her younger brother, quote, ate mom's pills, end of quote. She also said that when Whitney found out, she whipped him and made him go to bed, but later took him to the hospital. On August 9th, Whitney Ard pleaded not guilty to drug and gun charges at the 19th Judicial Courthouse. Prosecutors argued the massive quantities of drugs discovered before Mitchell's death showed criminal intent and negligence so severe that Ard should remain locked up before her guilt is proven. Her defense, in turn, said the woman was one of several victims in the case. He said she was someone crippled by addiction to the very substance that took her son's life and that of many others. Ultimately, Judge Smith sided with prosecutors and Whitney's bond was revoked. In addition to the revoking of her bond, the judge ordered Ard to undergo substance abuse evaluation in 30 days. During the May raid, investigators had found 8.5 ounces of the potent synthetic opioid in the attic of her home. Nearby were 4 pounds of meth, an illegal firearm, $26,000 in cash, and other assorted drugs, according to police documents. Her charges included over 6 or more possession of narcotics charges, possession of drug paraphernalia, CDS in presence of a minor, illegal possession of a firearm with CDS, and unlawful use of a machine gun. The elder, Mitchell Robinson, faced 10 charges stemming from the raid, including handling a machine gun and possessing drugs with intent to distribute. Despite all the warning signs, Hicks says the case was never reported to the sheriff's office. DCFS leaders did not immediately provide media with copies of their policies or explain why cases like Mitchell's would not be referred to law enforcement. Following a DCFS investigation into the matter, agency head Secretary Marketa Walters sat with media sources for an interview.
Even though the state admits that they messed up big time, not one person has been fired over this. In the Scotty Hunter exclusive, the head of DCFS tries to explain why and what's next.
There's no longer any doubt. DCFS dropped the ball hard, allowing this sweet 2-year-old Mitchell Robinson to die on their watch.
How much responsibility does DCFS take for the death of Mitchell Robinson?
Well, we take responsibility for not getting back in time. We take responsibility for not being there.
We now know the agency was there, making contact with the mother all along. But for a number of reasons, workers chose not to act right from the beginning. They failed to launch an investigation even after the hospital reached out to them about the child's first overdose back in April, 2 months before the baby died. In an exclusive interview with the 9 News investigators, the woman at the top, Secretary Marketa Walters, admits that was a mistake.
In hindsight, yes. At the time, the reporter didn't have a sense of urgency. They said law enforcement was not being called. There was a negative drug screen. So there were reasons that were valid to not respond to it. In hindsight, of course, I wish we had taken it right then.
But it wouldn't be the only mistake, nor the only opportunity they missed to keep this child alive. The second time a doctor reached out to DCFS confirming fentanyl was found in the baby's system, the worker responsible for the case was out sick. So again, DCFS did nothing.
The worker was on sick leave. Is that enough of an excuse to not act?
No, the case should have been reassigned by the supervisor. It is the supervisor's job to know what her workers are facing and what their workload is. So the case should have been reassigned so that somebody could go.
So there is a fail-safe in place when that happens?
Yes.
And it just was not followed?
They were overloaded in the Baton Rouge office. That's not an excuse. That's just what happened. It did not get reassigned. It should have been.
Tonight, we know that supervisor who was in charge of overseeing the case has resigned, and the worker who had direct ties to the situation has been suspended as the investigation into the botched case deepens.
Are you disappointed just in how your staff handled this case, followed this case, and ultimately allowed it to fall?
I am heartbroken this child died. I am very disappointed, and so is everybody that works here. Nobody in this agency intended harm.
While she does not believe anyone let this child die on purpose, the secretary tells me they were about to fire the supervisor right before she chose to leave on her own. We pressed the secretary about why they didn't just fire that supervisor on the spot.
And she just resigned. I mean, I can't keep somebody from resigning.
I will be following the outcome of this case, so be sure to subscribe for updates. May the family and friends of Mitchell Robinson III find solace in the happy memories, and may his soul rest in perpetual peace. Thank you.